News.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
KVNU News Time is 4:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Logan Dental Associates. Police are searching for a homicide suspect considered armed and dangerous after his girlfriend was found dead inside her Heber City home. The Heber Police Department responded to a home on the corner of 500 East 300 South on a possible death Thursday morning around 10:30. According to police, a female victim who lives at the home did not arrive to work Thursday morning. Police say a concerned coworker drove to the woman's house for a welfare check. The coworker found the victim deceased on the floor of the residence and then contacted police. Police are trying to locate the woman's boyfriend, who they say should be considered armed and dangerous. 35-year-old Michael Grant Asman was described as 5 feet 6 inches tall, weighing about 195 pounds, with blonde hair, blue eyes. The clothing description of Asman was unknown. Police believe he left the area in a 2005 Chevy pickup truck with Utah license plates T287M. If you have seen Michael or his vehicle or know of his whereabouts, you're asked to call the Wasatch County Sheriff's Office at 435-654-1411 or dial 911. KVNU News Time is 4:06. KVNU weather for tonight, partly cloudy skies. Overnight low in the upper 50s, sunny upper 90s tomorrow, and then around 101 on Sunday. With the cloud cover today, it's kept things cool, although it looks like skies are clearing, so we may see some hot temperatures yet this afternoon. It's only been to 81. Right now it's 79 at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Bring back the sounds you've been missing. Schedule a free hearing evaluation with Dr. Paul Daines at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
My name is Dr. Brandon Prevey, and I love being a dentist. I work with Drs. Curtis Taylor, Anthony Larson, and Paul Harris. When people ask where our office is, I actually have two answers. First, I spend part of the week at Logan Dental Associates, and then second, I spend the other part at Cherry Creek Dental in Richmond. Both locations are a full-service dental office and can take care of everyone in the family. Call or go online and make your appointment with the offices most convenient for you. Logan Dental Associates in Logan or Cherry Creek Dental in Richmond.
KVNU News Time is 4:07. Most of the events will be Saturday in Hyde Park for their annual Hometown Day celebration, but at least one event is being held this afternoon, and it kicked off just moments ago. It's the first annual Hyde Park Car Show. Organizer Landon Wiley talked about how the idea for this car show came about.
Just the general love for going to a car show with my family. Been doing the Father's Day car show over at Lee's for about 13 years, and it's been awesome. And I've always wanted to do an evening car show in the park.
So the car show running now till 8 o'clock this evening. Wiley said this includes awards that will be given out by the mayor and city council. A special feature of the car show is a kids' boxcar project. A
car show for little kids where they can decorate a car and come on out to the movie in the park. We're going to be showing Cars the movie, and we thought it'd be fun to have a drive-in car show for kids to decorate a little box car, come out, pull up to the drive-in theater, and enjoy a movie in the park after the car show at 8 o'clock.
All activities will be held at the Center Street Church Square. Another event that will be held today and Saturday is the Hyde Park Hometown Days softball tournament. That will actually be held at Elkridge Park in North Logan. A full day of activities will be held on Saturday, including the Velvet Highway Parade. The two-day event wraps up Saturday night with a dance and fireworks. You can get more information. Just go to hydeparkutah.org. And the Cache Valley Veterans Association is holding their annual Veterans Resource Fair Saturday at the Dan Gillenskog Veterans Resource Center, 1760 North, 200 East in North Logan, across the street from the Sports Academy and Racket Club. From 9 to 2, The center will be open for assistance from a host of federal, state, and local agencies that will be there to assist veterans and their families. The Department of Veterans Affairs Woman Roadshow will be bringing information about health care services for women veterans. Local organizations like CAPSA, the Family Place, the Rocky Mountain Service Dog Project, and the USU Sorensen Center will be there. They help people with family finances, mortgage default counseling, first-time home buyers, counseling, and credit card counseling. And a barbecue will begin to be served at 11 a.m. until everyone is fed. KVNU News Time is 4:10. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
News Talk KVNU, 610 a.m. at 102.1 FM.
Do you have a broken appliance? Save money and repair your appliance with Daryl's today. Maybe you'll decide you need to purchase new. If so, you can apply up to $95 of your service call toward an appliance purchase. We reduce the risk when you choose Daryl's. It's a unique deal only we can offer you. See our store for details. Daryl's Appliance Service and Sales west on Airport Road, open until 6 p.m. on weekdays, 5 on Saturday.
Here at Legacy House of Logan, people often tell us, I promised my mom I would never put her in a nursing home. Or, Dad told me he never wanted to live in one of those places. But it's important to remember that senior care is one of the toughest and most stressful jobs you'll ever have. Legacy House of Logan can be your extra set of hands, from bathing and dressing to help with medicine, cooking, and housekeeping on 1400 North in Logan and online at legacylogan.com.
The United States Deputy Sheriff's Association is a national nonprofit and the largest non-governmental provider of services to law enforcement. The USDSA assists city, county, state, and federal agencies with free safety equipment donations and officer survival training, along with cash donations to families of law enforcement officers who perish in the line of duty, college scholarships for the children of law enforcement, a citizen awareness program, and more. For more information on the USDSA and how you can help, visit usdeputy.org.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cash Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have two guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 a.m. at 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It is Friday, July 15th. I'm Jason Williams. Bill Walter here in the studio as well. Andy Morgan joining us in hour 2 for the For the People movie show. And there is no shortage of stories we could talk about today. It has been, yet again, another water-heavy day in legislative circles. The legislature, of course, not meeting in interim or regular session, but they do have ongoing task force and committee work. And they also have this ongoing water situation, the drought, conservation, planning for the future, how to handle all of the growth. And it keeps coming up again and again in various ways that really just the simplest way to respond to any of the, or to describe any of this is as more is fleshed out and as more planning is done, more things keep bubbling to the surface that can be best described as, it's tough because we're talking multiple legislatures here. The legislature, the makeup of the body changes not a lot from year to year, or election to election rather, but some, and it does change quite a bit. In fact, between the last 15 years and today, only about 50% of the legislature is new, or isn't new. Sorry. So about half of the legislature has changed hands in the last 15 years, and that is a perpetual thing. There are surges and waves. We never really, at least in my lifetime and probably your lifetime listening out there, have we had a massive exodus or cleaning of house. We like our incumbents here in Utah. I don't know why. I mean, there's got to be a reason. I don't mean that to sound disparaging, like they all deserve to go. But I'm just not sure what the reason is, why we have higher than most other states such a re-election of the incumbent track record. So, but it does change. So when I say the legislature, we're talking 20 years of legislative bodies that have morphed and evolved in different names and faces. And some are the same. Some have been there forever and will stay until they retire probably or are retired. As just happened to Democratic Senator Gene Davis. He lost his primary after getting a challenger for the first time ever in his political career during the primary there in the Salt Lake County area, when voters just felt he'd become unresponsive to constituents. And that happens from here and there. But really, overall, there are some long-termers. And so institutional knowledge does play a part in all of this, especially on important issues. And that's where today's story bubbled up and has gotten a lot of attention. The short version of this story, there are a lot of conversations happening right now about water, about reservoirs, about the projected growth, about the Great Salt Lake, and a lot of times they are presented to us by elected officials, some who have been in the legislature for many, many years, as almost a surprise. Like, oh, look what just happened. Who could have known? Well, it turns out they could have and did. So the reason I point this out, I hate to point this in any single lawmaker. Again, because the guard changes, from time to time and on a continuous basis in small steps. New people come in. People who've been there a while go out. But the staff, a lot of the staffers are the same. A lot of the sources of information to inform lawmakers on various issues are the same. When it comes to water and water management, one of the most consistent sources of information, or at least a source that should be a consistent source of information, is the fact that we have not one, not two, but three very respectable and reputable institutions of research, Utah State University being one of those three right here in the state. But here's the story today. The Salt Lake Tribune reporting that the research coming out of USU, U of U, and even other universities in other states when it comes to water in the West and the Colorado River in southern Utah specifically, has said consistently since, get this, 1930, that we were working with water that didn't really exist. That has been a constant refrain of water in general for almost 100 years now. And recent research has gotten more detailed about it, showing that the Colorado River was already overburdened 10 years ago, and likely before that, but the research was done 10 years ago. It's been built upon just 2 years ago by the University of Utah, right here in Utah, and this was presented to lawmakers at the same time that many of them were pushing for two different things, both a new water board, and this was sold as getting Utah a seat at the table so that we could defend our right to water from the Colorado River against discussions happening in Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, the the four-state compact that exists over Colorado River water. And California is mixed in there, too, a little bit. But because they do end up at the tail end of that somehow. And so the presentation by the Speaker of the House, Brad Wilson, who wrote the bill and pushed the bill 2 years ago to create this new water board, it came under criticism immediately because it was noticed that in the legislation, this water board would have the ability to close its meetings to the public, which is not at all tradition with water boards, water managers. These are groups, task forces that have been put together over the years to deal with water planning. They traditionally have to adhere to state open records and public transparency law, GRAMA, and other provisions. But for reasons that they then walked back, they wanted to exempt this new water board from that. The suspicion, which I think was a fair suspicion, was that most of this was really about negotiations and deal making to get the Lake Powell pipeline happening. For those not familiar with it, the Lake Powell pipeline was a plan now completely bellied up. As many said it should have been from the start. It's not going to happen at this point. But the plan was to build this pipe that would pump water from Lake Powell, from the Colorado River and the Lake Powell Reservoir, to St. George. It's been, made apparent since then that, one, St. George does have a water issue. They're dependent almost entirely on wells where they can find them in the Virgin River, and that's not enough water for their growth that they already have, definitely not enough water for their projected growth. So something needs to happen there. But it's also come to light that St. George, per resident, their water use is 3 times the national average. And they're not really stepping it up when it comes to conservation. In fact, some of the cities in the Washington County area have been resistant and sticking their heads in the sand, according to our own governor, when it comes to water conservation. So the argument at the time was, should we be building this pipeline when they haven't even tried not using so much in the first place? Really, really good question. Now it's moot because the pipeline's dead, DOA. It might come back in future years, but for now, considering the levels in Lake Powell, the whole idea is up in the air. And this is after, a few $1 million of taxpayer money has already been spent in research, lobbying by the state, environmental assessments that were required for the health of the river, the work that was done with the Corps of Engineers, years of time and state employee resources and salaries have gone towards this because a handful of lawmakers just pushed and pushed and pushed for years. It was a bad idea from the start. It's now a dead idea. It's a bridge to nowhere. And it turns out all of the scientists that said this from the start were right. But worse, the news out today from the Salt Lake Tribune, lawmakers knew this. They were told this. They were presented this. They have access to the same resources the public has as far as Google searches or even calling, these institutions and their various research schools and asking the information to be sent. They'll gladly send it. They do it for me. I'm just a radio guy. They'd surely do it for a lawmaker working on a bill, right? But it turns out that when that did happen, it was ignored. And worse, it rarely happened. Lawmakers rarely got curious enough to ask anyone outside of legislative circles for information, for data on water. And yet they were pushing all of these ideas. Former State Representative Mike Knoll, currently working, and this is also DOA, thankfully, but currently working on a water conservation board in south central Utah to try and get them to invest in and build a golf course in the desert, of all things. Why? Because it would make he and his brother-in-law a lot of money. And he's brazen enough to not even try to hide that, which I guess is a good thing. But the point here is that these are folks that have access to information, education, and even very well-meaning lobbyists that have been apparently telling them certain things for years that are not reflected at all in a lot of their decisions or a lot of the plans that lawmakers have decided to become personally invested in pushing forward. Whether it be this water board to give Utah a seat at the table in a debate over water that doesn't actually exist. How ridiculous is that? To this Lake Powell pipeline, which every bit of information lawmakers were receiving said was a horrible idea that was unsustainable and a waste of taxpayer money. And yet they pushed it, and they pushed it, and they pushed it. I don't know what the solution to this is. I don't. When you have a high incumbency retention rate, when you have a given that, if the individual is a Republican, they're going to win the general election and be seated in the House or the Senate here in the state. When there are abilities that they have and have used to insulate themselves from accountability, from exempting themselves from public records laws, which they try to etch away at almost every single session, to simply sometimes just not discussing things with the public. It paints a picture of a legislative body so full of itself and so convinced that they are the smartest people in the room that they're actually not listening to the really smart people trying to help them make better decisions. And worse, it flies in the face of the whole point of a citizen legislature. A citizen legislature is supposed to mean that your lawmaker is just like you, meaning they don't know everything about everything. None of us do, right? So the idea behind this is that they have resources, that they can get informed on an issue. They have, again, institutions like USU just chock full of great information on almost any topic you could imagine. Years and years and years of research has been done on water in Utah by USU in the Natural Resources Department. All of that information is there for them to grab and to pass smarter legislation and to set smarter priorities. They're not. And now I'm not saying across the board. The legislature does some amazing planning, and they do, in some arenas, rely heavily on experts, informed lobbying groups, which, lobbyists aren't bad by just being a lobbyist. They can be, but they aren't just by default bad. Some of them are there, like the Utah League of Cities and Towns, for example. They do a great job of holding lawmakers accountable and informing them at the same time. So lobby orgs can be good, and they have access to all of this. So it really begs the question why some of these things have become such a focal point for a growing number of lawmakers over the last few years, if every bit of information they were receiving was saying, hey, guys, this is a really dumb idea. Check it out. I've linked to the Salt Lake Tribune story. And again, I don't know what the fix for this is. I don't want to point this at any single lawmaker or even group of lawmakers. I mean, there are some obvious bad apples. There always will be. Some that just don't care what the smart decision is. If there's money to be made, there's a couple of those. One senator I can think of right now. That's always going to be the case. But the general body, I've met all of these people, well, most of them. Some of them I've even worked with on various projects. They're good people. They want to do good. So why the silo? Why are they resisting outside information when the whole point of a citizen legislature is to avoid exactly that? We don't have full-time paid lawmakers because the idea behind that is that they'll become siloed and they'll close their ears to information and they'll close their ears to citizens and they'll exempt themselves from accountability. That's the whole reason we don't do it the way some other states do with full-time paid lawmakers. And yet, with our citizen legislature, we're seeing a pattern. 753-5868. We'll be back right after this.
The 1965 Ford Cobra has a small block V8. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. The Brooklyn Dodgers won the 1952 World Series. The average accordion has 41 keys and 120 bass buttons. My anniversary is...
If you don't remember your anniversary, it doesn't matter what you do remember. The Anniversary Inn in Logan has dozens of themed and luxury suites. Call today or visit them online at anniversaryinn.com.
Plan your escape where romance awaits. The Anniversary Inn.
Senior Moments. Sponsored by the Empowering Seniors Group on News Talk KVNU.
My name is Bruce Lee. I'm here with my co-host Sid Roeder. We're here for another fun show.
This radio show is sponsored by the Empowering Seniors Group, which is a group of professionals that has dedicated their time and efforts to provide information that is hopefully useful to seniors, their family members, caretakers, and really anybody who's interested.
Senior Moments, every Saturday morning at 7:30 right here on News Talk KVNU.
United States Deputy Sheriff's Association is a national nonprofit and America's largest non-governmental provider of services to law enforcement. USDSA assists city, county, state, and federal law enforcement agencies through our many varied programs, including free safety equipment donations, free officer survival training, cash donations, and condolence letters to the family of law enforcement officers who perished in the line of duty. USDSA also offers college scholarships for the dependent children of law enforcement along with the Citizen Awareness Program and thank you cards to law enforcement. These are just some of the ways United States Deputy Sheriff's Association assists America's law enforcement and the citizens they serve. For more information about United States Deputy Sheriff's Association or to see how you can help, visit www.usdeputy.org. United States Deputy Sheriff's Association, taking training to the next level because lives are on the line.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. This is a response from a listener on the topic, my rant beforehand. I don't know. This is one that I believe in myself for a long time. I'm not sure I do anymore. But listener says, if you don't like what they do, vote them out. Yeah, in theory, right? But when the majority of voters are just going to look at the party identification, and I don't necessarily blame Republicans for this. Democrats have their own responsibility their own failure of responsibility, in my opinion, for not being competitive in this state and making our legislature, for example, healthier by running competitive races. That's what keeps any political body and an elected body healthy, is when they have to fight to be there. Through the election process. When they don't, when they can just sail in like every Republican in Utah, things get a little lazy, things get a little siloed, things get a little cozy, and we've seen the problems of that again and again. So Democrats are to blame in this as well, and they're really good at pointing out the flaws, the obvious flaws of this given that if someone runs as a Republican, they're going to get elected, even if they maybe don't deserve to be. Democrats are good at pointing that out. The state Democrats really good at pointing that out. But I mean, I always want to say, well, so you're the opposition party. Like, your whole role, the only reason you exist is to create a choice. Why aren't you doing that? So I get frustrated with them too. This isn't, just pointing at one party. I think this, I know this same thing happens in blue states. In blue states where it's just a given, if you're a Democrat, you're going to win the general election, the same thing happens. You get lazy lawmakers. You get lawmakers that don't want to be informed. They're not curious. They don't ask questions. And what do they have to lose? So they run a bad bill and everybody's angry at them. So what? They're still getting reelected. So that's how things operate. And it's any state with a long-lasting supermajority, it's what happens. So listener says, you have your vote, and I agree. But if there is a pattern, and if there's a given in a general election of which party is going to win, not saying your vote doesn't matter. I'm saying that it's not necessarily going to scare elected officials into good behavior. If they know that, their only worry for most Republicans here in the state, including our own lawmakers, they have two concerns: a primary, and that's it. So if they don't receive a primary, or if they receive a primary and it's some long shot, that's the only time they really have to scramble to be in office. Anyone running as a Republican, once the primary's over, if they're the nominee, they're already in office for the most part. So yeah, you can vote against them, but you're talking decades before you can make the legislature healthier. So personally, what I think is a better solution to all of this, or at least a step in the right direction, is more public engagement. One thing I do know about state lawmakers, when the public has stepped up and got really involved, they back down immediately. They know better. They're full of themselves. The legislature is a jealous and power-hungry body, and we've seen that over the last few years at a heightened pace, consolidating power, stripping power from the governor, from the judiciary, consolidating power, stealing decisions that should be left up to cities and counties, and sucking them up into the legislative process too. I mean, this is literally a governing body that believes they are the smartest people in the room. Well, again, we've got evidence like the Salt Lake Tribune story today showing that, on some issues, they can be pretty dang ignorant. When the public gets involved, I think the time we've seen it the most cohesive was 2011, that long ago, with House Bill 477. This was a bill that would have taken lawmakers' communications with each other, with lobbyists, with whoever, and made them private. The whole idea behind this, current state auditor, then House Representative John Dougall, ran the bill and became the boogeyman for secretive government after that, even though he's the furthest thing from that. And there's nobody in this state, elected or otherwise, that is an advocate and fighter for transparency more so than John Dougall, the state auditor. I know that from personal experience, and you can see it in how he conducts himself in the office of auditor over the last several years. But what he was trying to do was fix a problem legislative attorneys were making up. Legislative attorneys were making excuses to lawmakers that one of the reasons they weren't getting the work lawmakers were asking them to get done in time is they're spending so much time on grammar requests, on public records requests for lawmakers and their communications with lobbyists, which is a good thing that people were asking for that. I'm glad they were. So Dougall thought, well, we'll fix this. We'll just say they can't submit a grammar request for this. We'll publish it all once a year, voluntarily, but they can no longer take up our time with grammar requests. Obviously, that was controversial. Dougall immediately, regretted the move, and the bill was vetoed by the governor. And then a work group was put together, and thus begins, by the way, my involvement in all this. I was invited to be on that work group. But that was the last time that the public really collectively rose up. It was huge. It went on for months. The Capitol was elbow to elbow packed with protesters the day the bill was voted on. It brought activists from right-wing circles, left-wing circles together. Many of them still involved. Some of them went on to run for office and get elected. I mean, it was a literal movement in response to lawmakers trying to shield themselves from public scrutiny. And but that was 2011. Either way, it shows that it does happen. When people get involved, and not just screaming and yelling at them and marching around picketing with signs, I'm talking about when the public is involved and they're highly critical of something the legislature at large or a single lawmaker or whoever the governor is doing, they do respond. They are afraid of making the public mad. What too many of them count on is that will rarely happen, that people are rarely paying that much attention. And sadly, it appears to be the case most of the time. So that's my solution is to constantly advocate people to get involved in the legislative process, even if it's just watching the live streams of debates over various bills during the general session once a year. I hope it would be more than that, but even if that's all, you have at least, very least, more eyeballs on things lawmakers say. Senator Dan McKay, on the last day of the legislation, said some horrible things. I think he meant to say them differently, and I think that's what he said in an interview with the Tribune afterwards. But he said some atrocious things, and he said those because they were in a hurry. The clock was ticking on the final day of the session, and they forget people are watching. And so he had to apologize for that, and it may taint some of his bills as they sit in court right now. If the judge looks at that and says, well, that's clearly animus. You said this on the public record in support of this bill. That type of thing happens. Mistakes happen. These are human beings. There are some great tips out there, by the way, if you want to interact with the legislature on how to do it effectively. Because honestly, like any of us, if you're just calling them names, screaming, yelling, even threatening them, that's not going anywhere. Senator Todd Weiler takes those emails, takes the names off of them, and publishes them online on his Twitter feed. That's all that happens. He wants people to see how people think they can effectively talk to their lawmakers sometimes. So don't do that. But respectful emails, phone calls, even a text, engaging with them one-on-one at town halls or public events, you really can influence them, but it's going to take a lot more people doing so than are currently doing so. And again, the bad apples, they count on that. They rely on that to be bad apples. So that's my proposed solution. What's yours? 753-5868. We'll be back after the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 4:39, and the news is brought to you by U&I Furniture. Utah Governor Spencer Cox was elated by Thursday's news that the Forest Service has authorized the Uinta Basin Railway. This approval allows that railway proposal to continue to move forward, connecting the eastern part of Utah with national rail networks. Governor Cox said that state and local governments, the Ute tribe, energy producers, and rail companies have been making the argument for decades that improved access to the outside world will help the basin diversify its economy. He said, without a doubt, this infrastructure will improve economic opportunities for individuals, families, and businesses. The Uinta Basin is rich in natural resources, including hydrocarbons, phosphates, and other minerals critical to America's economy. However, it's also one of the largest areas of the western United States with no rail or freeway connections. Without rail, interstate highway, and major airport service, Duchesne and Uinta counties have been at a major competitive disadvantage when trying to attract business investment, and residents have had very limited employment prospects. The new rail will open up transportation options for natural resources as well as agricultural products, manufactured goods, and more. Utah is asking a judge to dismiss a legal challenge to its ban on transgender kids who want to compete in youth sports. Attorneys for the state argued this week that two unnamed transgender girls lack standing to challenge the law in court, in part because they have not been harmed by it. They allege one girl would be academically ineligible to compete in volleyball this upcoming fall, regardless of the ban, and say another won't be eligible to try out for high school girls swimming until next year. Challenges to Utah's ban parallel other cases in states such as Idaho, West Virginia, and Indiana. And a nuclear waste treatment plant in eastern Idaho designed to treat 900,000 gallons of sodium-bearing radioactive waste that has had numerous setbacks appears to be making progress. The U.S. Department of Energy this week says that the integrated waste treatment unit at the department's 890 square mile site that includes the Idaho National Laboratory recently treated more than 100,000 gallons of simulant over 7 weeks. The department plans additional testing and then a shutdown to make sure the plant is ready for radioactive waste. The department says increasing amounts of waste will be mixed with simulant when the plant is fully operational. The department did not give a timeline. KVNU News Time is 4:42.
We live in a great country. We live in a great valley with a lot to be thankful for. U&I Furniture wants to take a minute and say thank you for being such good neighbors and friends and customers. U&I features many brand names, including many American-made chairs by Southern Motion, Best, Franklin & Lane, Speed Queen appliances, and therapeutic mattresses, Legend brand TV consoles and entertainment centers. Find these American-made brand furniture products at the place where there's always a better buy, U&I Furniture, downtown Logan.
KVNU weather, partly cloudy tonight, overnight low in the upper 50s, sunny upper 90s tomorrow, and then about 101 on Sunday. It's been to 82. Relatively cool day because of all the cloud cover today. It's 82 degrees right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Whole Tree Care. By now, your trees and shrubs have new growth everywhere. If your yard is out of control, call Whole Tree Care. HULL Tree Care. They trim, shape, and remove trees and shrubs and clean it up as well. Ask about their radio discount. Call 760-6587. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
Don't let concerns about today's events derail your long-term financial strategy. Edward Jones Financial Advisors can help work with you to understand today's financial landscape and how to be positioned for the long term. Edward Jones can give you the tools for a reasoned, disciplined approach to investing. Get started by calling one of the 7 Edward Jones locations in Cache Valley. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
For the second year in a row, Advanced Heating and AC is honored to be named gold medalist for Best of Northern Utah in the AC and HVAC category. They thank you for your support and vote of confidence in their company. You have many choices when it comes to your home's heating and air conditioning system. Make sure you choose the gold medal winning company, Advanced Heating and AC. Call 752-7272 or stop by their showroom west of DI. Online at advancedheating-ac.com.
Reached the Sheriff's Department Civil Processing Division. Please hold where your call is transferred to Sergeant David Chapman. Deputy McCoy.
This is Sheriff Chad Jensen. Fraudulent phone calls similar to this one have been received by many citizens in Cache County. The most common scams are asking for payment over the phone because of a lawsuit, civil bench warrant, or to post bail for a family member who has supposedly been arrested. They ask for payment in form of prepaid cards, gift cards, or money transfers, and if you do not pay, they threaten to arrest you. The Sheriff's Office does not take payment or ask for personal information over the phone. These types of scams often use internet phone numbers which are nearly impossible to track. If you receive a phone call of this nature, do not give out any personal information and hang up. Be cautious about the information you give out over the phone to make sure you are not the next victim of a scam.
From ABC News, Wall Street Now. Stocks rallied Friday, rebounding after a volatile week that saw inflation reach a 40-year high. But Friday, investors bought on positive retail news. The Commerce Department saying consumers picked up their spending in June, up 1%, despite rising prices in grocery aisles and gas stations. That resilience, despite inflation, easing fears that the economy might be on the verge of a recession. And that 1% modest enough that it likely won't encourage the Fed to aggressively raise interest rates. The Dow Friday gained 655 points, the Nasdaq up 201 points, and the S&P 500 tacked on 72 points. Bank stocks making some of the biggest gains. Citigroup shares were worth almost 14% more by the end of the day. Steel wheels will keep rolling for now. Through an executive order, President Biden blocking a freight railroad strike that would disrupt shipments of goods for at least 60 days. The president naming a board of arbitrators to intervene in the contract dispute. Dave Packer, ABC News.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. I can't play it for you, and I probably won't recommend that you go watch it yourself unless you have a high tolerance for language and irritating people. But I'm not sure if this is current or former Logan resident. I don't know. I know at one time was a Logan resident, but there's an individual that got a little famous. And I'll be honest with you, I saw one of the earlier videos he'd done that sort of made him YouTube famous. And I kind of thought it was not only good, but important. What he did was he went out. I don't remember what the event was. He was at an event, and there were some police officers kind of overstepping a bit when it came to how they were talking to some of the attendees of the event and stuff like that. And I get that, you know. I have memories of this, but it was a sheriff's deputy. It was about 15 years ago. But being a person who, you know, had read up on this, I had a sheriff's deputy lie to me about what was constitutional, what he was allowed to do, what I was allowed to do. And I knew better, and I said, sir, no, that's not how this works. And he immediately just sort of nodded and kept quiet after that. This was during a traffic stop, by the way. I wasn't protesting or burning anything down. So I have personal experience to say, you know, there are cops that will go beyond I assume reasons they feel are justified in their head when it comes to what they're allowed to ask you to do. There are great resources out there, by the way, if you ever want to look at them as far as what you do and don't have to do. The simplest way to understand this, is there's a give and take on all of this. Like, for example, if an officer wants to search your vehicle, you can say no. But if they have reason to suspect you were under the influence or that there is some other crime involved, and it's substantial reason, significant reason that would hold up in court, then they arrest you. So you can refuse to be searched, but they're going to put the cuffs on. Now, some people choose that because it's resolved quickly in court, and that oftentimes is also a good way to weed out the bad apples in a department. So in the case of this individual, and I'm not even going to say his name, at this point, I don't want to make the individual more famous. But for those who already know, you know who I'm talking about when I tell you this story. But for those who don't, you can find him easily if you want to. My advice is don't make him any more famous. It's noteworthy, though, what has happened here, I think, and unfortunate. So the original video, this was months ago, maybe even a year ago. This individual calls himself an auditor, a citizen auditor of law enforcement. And he was at an event, and there were some officers, city police, I think, at this event in Texas or somewhere, and they were overstepping. He has the recording; it's video, and what they were doing and asking the attendees to do and accusing them of was not. They were out of line, and so he then approaches them and starts asking them as public servants, as taxpayer-funded employees of the state. He starts asking them information he is entitled to ask. Any of us, any citizen is entitled to ask. And the police officers are obviously not happy with this. How dare you challenge our authority? He points out that he is legally allowed and even entitled to this information and keeps demanding it. Things get a bit heated. They eventually arrest him. Anyway, he wins in court, obviously, and he becomes famous for this. And then he just spends the next couple of years doing this. At one point, again, a Logan resident, there are some YouTube and video clips you can find in which he was doing this in Logan. But unfortunately, at times, he would post videos where he was obviously trying to provoke a reaction from a police officer. And it would usually not go too far, but it became obvious at a certain point this was a spotlight seeker. This wasn't someone who was just trying to make the world better or trying to keep accountability in the system. All those things I can respect. This is obviously an individual that was enjoying the stardom, enjoying their viral moments, and they were just hoping that they could get a police officer to just go too far, to shove them, to arrest them for inappropriate reasons, to say something on video that was unconstitutional or a bald-faced lie. You could tell that's what he was trying to do. And at that point, it became less about, accountability and citizen advocacy, in my opinion. It became more about this individual, and they're chasing the spotlight and hoping to actually create an incident to make themselves more famous. At that point, I forgot about this individual. I rolled my eyes, figuratively, maybe literally, I don't know, and I just moved on because I was disappointed. I like the idea of a citizen, being a bit of a watchdog in a responsible way. I think that's good, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's your county government, whether it's garbage collection. I mean, I don't care. There are many places where citizen watchdogs can and have and will always be very useful and very important. But I was disappointed to find out that's not what this person was doing. And it became obvious again in some of his videos as his fame went on. So I moved on. Well, this person's back in the viral news today. After a video was posted, not here in Utah, but by this individual who did once, at some point at least, live here in Logan, Utah. It's moved on from the front page now, but it was the dominant watched and shared topic on Reddit today. And it is a video of an officer attempting to, now this isn't uncommon, and I'll be honest with you, I kind of think this is sort of a silly citation. The Highway Patrol was asked by Hiram City several years ago, and I think this also happened in North Logan a few years ago. They just come through and they do some patrolling for people parked the wrong way. I feel like, I don't know. There's a reason that's a rule. I get it. It has to do with traffic flow, safety entering and exiting the road, all of that stuff. It's not an arbitrary law or rule. But the idea that resources would be spent out looking for it, not just writing a citation when you happen to run across it, goes to me, better ways resources could be used. Anyway, the officer is trying to put a citation on the vehicle that is parked the wrong way. And this individual, again, a supposed citizen watchdog just about accountability, comes out and sees the officer about to do this, demands the officer's name, which there's no problem with that, refers to the officer as servant, which is technically true, but at the same time is intentionally meant to provoke an officer, and then proceeds to call the officer names, use a lot of foul language. Also, technically not illegal. And then at a certain point, he says, at this point, you can tell he's not just being a citizen watchdog. He's not just standing up to authority. He parked the car wrong. It was his car. It's registered in his name. It's at his house. All this becomes clear in the video as the officer nicely, I'll point out, tries to explain. I'm just writing a citation because your car is parked the wrong way, and I'm writing it to you because the vehicle's registered in your name. At a certain point, these are all answers to this man's question as he screams them at this cop who's being really nice and to his credit, not taking the bait. And then at a certain point, this individual, again, one-time Logan resident, maybe still, I don't know, that has received a little bit of online fame for supposedly being a bad cop watchdog with his videos. He turns to the officer and says, police officers take their own life at a higher percentage than the average populace, and you should join those officers. And he says this.
That's horrible.
It's a horrible thing to say, and it undermines everything this individual claims to be about, which is just watchdogging, which is just trying to improve things and make things better. Because this officer, who again throughout the entire thing never takes the bait, is nice, explains and answers every question he's asked respectfully, and this individual then wraps it up after screaming obscenities at this officer, calling him names. He tells him that he should join the, which is true. There's a higher rate, tragically, of law enforcement suicide than most other groups in the United States, and he tells them you should join those officers who took their own life over a citation for parking the wrong way. Which, by the way, when I paid mine, $20.
Well, that's not bad.
No, but the escalation of this, I don't know. It's unfortunate because it works against everything this individual claims to stand for. It works against any advances in accountability, which are needed for law enforcement. It works against the activism in general, those who are trying to, make changes in law enforcement and in how we go about policing in the United States, especially, I think, examples like, when a cop should be the one that shows up and when a social service worker should show up instead. All those things are sort of tied together and connected. And this individual has, in ways, to his credit, helped elevate some of these issues through his own, viral, famous moments. And then here he is on this video today telling a cop he should kill himself or join the officers who have, rather, because of a parked the wrong way citation. It was an embarrassing display. And honestly, at this point, the man deserves to be infamous. He no longer deserves to be internet famous for his quote-unquote watchdog work. He deserves to be infamous for being an absolutely horrible person. We'll be back right after this.
With rising gas prices, there's never been a better time than now to go electric. Come to Murdoch Volkswagen and see what all the hype is about when you test drive the new 2022 ID4. With a range of just under 300 miles, the ID4 has all the latest technology, including a digital dash, remote access, adaptive cruise, and blind spot monitoring. Come in and take a test drive and reserve your brand new electric ID4 today. When you walk through our doors, you feel like family. At Murdoch Volkswagen in Logan or online at murdochvw.com.
Call 866-628-3065 or see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 7/31/22.
That's our time for Hour 1, but stay tuned. The For the People movie show and Andy Morgan coming up right after this here on KVNU Logan.